Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Adrienne. Hope you guys are doing good today. So this video is going to finally be discussing why I left Islam. Like I did with my why I left Jehovah's Witnesses, I want to give some backstory. I think I mentioned that my son and I moved into a new apartment, Breckenridge. Breckenridge will become infamous, and you'll hear more about that later in this video. But we moved into this new apartment, 2-bedroom, 2-bath. Gabe had his own room, I had my own room. Everything was kind of peachy keen for a while. I ended up like getting back interested in, you know, like, okay, I'm gonna finally like get my shit together and go back to school. My aunt ended up passing away, my Aunt Joanne, and you've heard me talk about her before. She's the aunt who got me out of jail, and the one who ended up telling me that basically there were some things that happened when I was younger. That aunt passed away. I was really starting to question like what's gonna happen to me when I die. That was like in my mind. And so I started like my own little journey, I guess, my own little religious journey of, you know, searching and trying to find answers to a lot of the questions that I had at the time. I was doing what I used to call church hopping. So I was like going to a different church, you know, every other weekend. And I never really found anything that just sat well with me, anything that I felt comfortable with. The year that Gabriel started kindergarten, he was going to a Montessori school, and I met a friend there. She was a Sunni Muslim. So this was my first time really interacting with Muslims. Like I heard the stories from my mom growing up, but I also knew that my mom, when she was a Muslim, she was a Nation of Islam Muslim, which is completely different from like sort of mainstream Islam. We became really close. We spent a lot of time at each other's houses. Had falafels for the first time with her. Became a vegetarian for like 4 or 5 months during the time that I knew her. I never wanted to go any further beyond that. It was like, okay, I like Muslims, I like the culture, I like the food and everything, different foods from different countries, but I don't really want to join. After my aunt passed away, I started back at Pitt Community College, and I met a new friend there. Her name is Lynette. And Lynette and I, like, just like this, we just became really, really tight, really, really quick. We saw each other every single day because we had classes together. We had, I think, a math class together. And it was Monday through Friday. So we saw each other every single day, every single day. We would talk to each other on the phone. We would call each other every day. We got really, really close. And she ended up inviting me over to her house. And I remember initially when I met her and I went to her house and I was like, so that's your husband? And she's like, yeah, that's my husband. And there was like another woman there and with her child, and I was like trying to figure out like what was going on. And she ends up telling me, you know, yes, I'm a Muslim, this is my husband, but this is also his other wife. And I was like, wait, what? Other wife? What? So, you know, she explains the whole co-wife thing to me. So a co-wife in Islam is basically a second or third or fourth wife. So in Islam, of course, you can have up to 4 wives. It was very odd to me at first, but as she was like explaining to me more and more, I was like, okay, you know, I get it. I get why you're doing it, I guess. You know, she told me that, oh, I think my husband likes you, he's interested or whatever. And I don't know, I guess I didn't take it seriously at first, honestly. But you know, I was just like, okay, whatever. She starts telling me more about this whole co-wife thing. Like, oh, you know, you support one another. You know, you watch each other's kids. We take turns spending with him. This is another thing that people get confused about co-wives. Like, it's not like an orgy, right? It's not a threesome or a foursome or whatever. You're not having sex together with the other wives. You have like your individual time alone with him. The way that she was explaining everything to me was like, you know, okay, so it's like this one big happy family, basically. The idea of family at the time was so important to me, and it was something that I like craved and I wanted for my son and for my kids. You know, I guess that's what really kind of started turning my head towards the idea of being a co-wife. The way that he was portrayed to me was like, oh, he's this really nice guy. He worked for like this therapy agency, like working with kids, mentoring them and things like that. Kind of like the guys who do like intensive in-home. So he met me and everything, and you know, he was just like gushing basically, like, oh, you're such a good mother, you have such a nice house, you take care of your kids so well, you're doing so well, like you're going to school, blah 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 blah. Just telling me all these, everything that I wanted to hear basically. basically. My friend Lynette did not have any kids by him. And at the time, initially, it was just the other wife that had a kid, but then I knew that he had other kids as well, like by other women, because he had been married before. As time goes along, I'm starting to see things that like don't quite add up. Lo and behold, I come to find out that in fact, he has been fired from his job. So he's actually not even working at this time that he's wanting me to become like the third co-wife. He's not working. And not only that, he actually got fired from this like behavioral support job that he had for like having an argument or some kind of altercation with a child. So I'm like, oh my God, like what in the world? By this time, I was already starting to like assert myself more as far as like men is concerned. And I was like, yeah, no, that's not gonna work for me. So, you know, with everything that I had already been through, I'm like, no, I'm not going back down that road. The ultimate deal breaker with him for me was like, he came to me one time and he was like, so, you know, if ever there comes a time, if we, as in him and like the household that he was already in, it's like, so if ever there comes a time where we need like some money or something, would you be able to like help us? And I was like, check please. No, that is your job. Like, you're the man. You're supposed to be the one that takes care of the women and your household, basically. So it's not my responsibility to take care of you. Like, he was a grown, able-bodied man. Nothing was wrong with him. It's just like, wait, so I'm supposed to financially support you? No. We're not doing that. I was definitely like, no, I am not down for that. I'm not gonna sit here and support a grown-ass man and two other grown-ass people and then all of y'all's kids. No, that's not happening. And he got really upset about that. Once he found out that I was not gonna marry him, that I was no longer interested in him, his whole demeanor, everything changed. Like, he wrote me this long email, basically like all the good stuff that he had said initially about me, all of that flipped. That's what's wrong with black women nowadays. You want somebody to do da 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 da. And he was just going on and on. He was upset. He was really upset with me. It's one of those situations where I'm like, thank you, God, because I definitely dodged a bullet there. Then after all was said and done, it was like, Adrienne, you weren't even interested in him. Like, I think it was more so me wanting that family, that connection, that support team. You know, it really had nothing to do with him. So I started going to the masjid, and you know, I was really making friends there outside of my friend Lynette. So when the whole situation with her husband went down, she and I actually stopped talking, because I was like, what in the world? Like, you're trying to get me in here in this situation. It's crazy. I also found out later on that he had like a side chick. So like on top of the two wives that he had. So come to find out, he had like a side chick. And the side chick they knew about, like, she already had like one or two kids already. He ended up getting that chick pregnant again. So I was like, oh, thank you. I dodged like so many bullets in that scenario. But anyway, my friend and I kind of had like a falling out, but I still had my friends from the masjid. I was really starting to like learn and everything. People were giving me books and prayer rugs and just abayas and all kinds of things. And it was really nice. Like, I was really starting to just fall in love with Islam, like the religion in and of itself. Islam, like most religions, you know, teach about the same principles, I feel like, that most religions teach about, you know, love, kindness, mercy, goodness, you know, all those things, those universal kind of laws. I was reading the Quran. I was going to the masjid every Friday for prayer and just kind of being with the sisters and everything. It made me feel really good, like really safe and secure. I honestly was starting to like feel better about myself as a woman. And you know, before I knew it, sure enough, I was taking my shahada. Your shahada is basically your declaration of faith. You're saying, I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and that Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, is his messenger. Okay, I know it's going to be difficult for you to understand if you're watching this and you have like no history or idea of what Islam is, or if you've never actually spent time with Muslims. For my ex-JWs, when we talk about the whole like love bombing that goes on when you're at the congregation and everything, especially when you're new and you're like just getting baptized, the only way that I can kind of equate it with that is to say, when you take your shahada, instead of a love bomb, it's like a love atomic explosion. Like there, I can't even describe the feeling when you, that day, even to this day, like it's still one of the happiest days of my life. Like next to me having my kids and like graduating from college, it's definitely up there with all of those, because there was so much love in that masjid to go around. It was just amazing. Like everybody, just imagine you taking your shahada and everybody coming up to you, all the women, I'll put it that way, because of course the men, you're not like touching the men or whatever, but all the women come up to you. So you've got like moms and grandmas and like young people and old people just coming up to you, telling you congratulations, like telling you they love you and just hugging and kissing, and just it's amazing. You can't really describe it. You have to experience it for yourself. Like it's amazing, and it just makes you feel, again, with like my desire to be a part of this like big happy loving family. It was definitely met that day. Like I felt so encompassed in like all of the love and just people telling me what a good job I was doing, and you know, what a good thing I was doing, and just I can't even it's an amazing feeling, honestly. Like it's kind of one of those out of body experiences that you really will never forget. Like even now that I'm not practicing Islam anymore, like it's still that memory, that feeling is still in my mind. It's definitely something that I will never forget. My only wish was that someone would have told me to bottle that feeling, because you're definitely gonna need it later on. One thing that you'll find out when you take your shahada, like especially if you're a woman, I think even if you're a man, but for women it's like, okay, you've taken your shahada, now next step, getting married. It's kind of a joke that like you took your shahada on a Friday, you need to be getting married the following Friday, right? There were many attempts at people to try to get me married. I remember there was like a lady that called me like on three-way with her son, and we're like talking. It did not dawn upon my simple little brain that what was going on, but it was like an interview basically, right? They were trying to see, I guess, if there was any sparks that were gonna fly over the phone. At that time, like continuing my education was very important to me. I graduated from Pitt Community College. I went on to ECU, got my bachelor's, and then I went back and got my master's as well. There was one Friday actually, Jummah, which for Muslims, that's like your holy day, kind of like your Sunday. For Muslims, it's Friday. And so this Friday, I'm getting ready, you know, getting a shower and everything, putting my abaya on. The abaya is like the long black dress, long sleeves, all that. And I said, you know what, I'm just gonna sit down until it's time for us to go. So I sit down on the couch, turn on the TV, and I'm sitting there. The kids are like back in the room playing, and all of a sudden I get a knock at the door. So okay, I get up, walk to the door, look out the peephole, there's no one there. Like literally, I'm looking, there's no one there. So I'm like, okay, maybe the kids are playing or whatever outside. Okay, so I go back and sit down on the couch. I'm sitting down, like almost as soon as I sit down, I get another knock at the door. So then I get up again and I walk over to the door and I'm like, who is it? And so all of a sudden I hear, police, open up. Almost as soon as he says police, open up, like he steps in front of the peephole so that I can see him. So I'm like, okay, he's got on a uniform. Let me just see what's going on. As soon as I open the door, like literally open the door, this officer is standing on one side with his gun drawn. Another officer is standing on this side of the door with his gun drawn. And I'm like looking, like just happened to glance behind him, like I'm seeing other officers coming up the stairs. I lived on the 3rd floor of an apartment complex. Immediately, like just like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, what's going on, what's going on? So this officer orders me out of the house. He's like, come outside. And so I walk outside, and he looks at me. He's like, well, we had a report that there was a fight outside in the parking lot, and it spewed upstairs, and somebody was bleeding inside your apartment. I'm just standing there, y'all, seriously, I'm standing there looking like, what in the world are you talking about? Like, what in the world? No one's fighting. I'm not even the fighting type. Like, nobody's in here bleeding or anything like that. And so he's like, well, we have to come inside and search your house. Now, mind you, they still have their guns on me, right? So he orders me back inside, and he made like some smart ass comment to go along with it, because of course I'm standing there, like I'm shaking, like you have guns drawn on me. Of course I'm scared as hell. Like, I don't know what's going on. You're talking about somebody fighting. I hesitated, like when he said, like, we have to come inside, like go back inside the house. And I think I like paused for a minute, and he looks at me, he's like, well, it's not my house. Like that. And I'm like, what the freak? Like, why do you have an attitude with me? What did I do? So I ended up going back into the house, and he's like telling me to sit down on the couch, and he's like, who else is in the house? And I tell him my kids are in the house. So this is like either right before or like right at the beginning of like all of the shootings and everything with, you know, Michael Brown and so on and so forth. And I'm terrified. I'm like, I have these police officers in my house with weapons drawn, and my kids are running around. You know, I had like basically 2 toddlers at the time. Well, my son is like, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6. And, you know, Gabe is like, at this point, he's like a ping pong ball, basically running back and forth. He's excited. Like, I remember him like coming up to me like, oh my God, there are real police officers inside of our house. Like, I've never seen a real police officer before. And, you know, he's excited. I'm like a nervous wreck, you know, just hoping and praying that they don't, you know, shoot one of my kids or me. So they tell me to like, you know, bring the kids up front and everything. So I'm calling the kids, and the 3 of us are sitting down on the couch. They do their search, you know, they're like walking around the house or whatever. And he comes back up to the front. Now, he's like yelling at me initially. As soon as he comes back up front, and he calls me back over to him, and his whole like demeanor changed completely. He's like, oh, well, I'm sorry. It must have been a spoof call. And like, at the time when he first said it, I was like, a spoof call? Like, what is that? I had no idea what that was. Like, I literally had to Google it to get more information. So they can basically change their number to look like any other number other than their actual number, right? So someone had called into the police station, made up this whole story that, you know, I was fighting downstairs in the parking lot, and someone was stabbed, and somehow that person like stumbled upstairs into my apartment or whatever. Y'all, when I say that was probably the most terrifying day of my life, because I honestly thought that I was gonna die that day, or my kids were gonna die. Like, either way, it was just a bad situation all around. I literally had like 6 officers in my house that day, and I still have the police report around here somewhere with like all these names, like first initial, last name of these different officers that were in my house that day. It was almost as if he was upset with me, because he was like, oh, you know, we've got ambulances and fire trucks and stuff downstairs waiting and everything. And, you know, I'm just like, okay, like, I didn't cause this whole situation to happen. And, you know, yeah, so he ends up leaving, the police end up leaving, and I was so terrified. I did not leave my house for like 3-4 days after that. Like, I literally did not open my front door. When they left and I locked that door, I did not leave for like 3 or 4 days, because I was so terrified. I finally was like calling people, like I was calling my Muslim friends, and I was like, you know, this situation happened. And to make matters worse, you know, I have all of these people telling me, oh my God, Adrienne, like, they're trying to set you up, you gotta leave. Like, somebody's trying to set you up. Either the police is trying to set you up, or somebody else that you know is trying to set you up. Like, you gotta leave, like, take your kids and go. And I'm like, where am I gonna go? Like, I don't have anywhere to go. I didn't have money saved up to be able to just randomly take off for a few days. In a lot of ways, it was very triggering, you know, that like it just brought up a lot of those trauma feelings again. I've never even handled a gun, really. I think this was the period that I was staying with my grandmother after I got out of jail, but she asked me to like take her gun to the car and put it in the glove compartment. That's the only time I've ever even held a gun. I've never used a gun, I've never fired a gun. So to have one pointed at me, pointed at my kids, that was just absolutely terrifying. It definitely triggered like a huge depression, a lot of distrust, a lot of paranoia. It changed my whole life, to be honest with you. I would not shop at stores that were close to me. I would go like across town. And sometimes I would even shop out of town. Like, that's how much in fear I was. Like, when we were leaving out of the house, I would always tell the kids like, okay, just hurry up. Like, as soon as mommy closes the door and locks the door, we have to like run really fast to the car, and we would just get into the car and I would crank up and immediately like go. And the same thing when we were coming in, it was like, we just park and go into the house. We never spent time outside. I felt like I could not trust anyone because I had no idea who was doing this to me. I did actually end up finally getting the courage to go in to the police department. I think somebody was like, oh, you got to go in and get a copy of like the police report, you know, tell them that you want more information, like demand this and this and that. And so I went in and I was trying to like get more information, got nowhere. All I got was like, oh, we'll take down your name and number and someone will get back in touch with you. Nothing. I asked about hearing the voicemail, not voicemail, the 911 call, because I was like, okay, if it's someone that I know, maybe I'll recognize their voice. No, we don't do that. We don't share 911 calls. That information, you have to get that from the DA's office, and 9 times out of 10, the DA's office is not going to do it. It was just like a closed door in my face. Like, this thing happened to me and there was no recourse whatsoever. Apparently, spoof calls, you can't track them. Like, you can make the calls, but you can't track the person who did it. That was definitely a huge blow to my faith. Just like I said, I couldn't trust anyone. I had no idea where this was coming from. Is it someone from the police department, someone from the neighborhood, you know, where I stay at? And I say the neighborhood because maybe a month or so before this incident happened, there was an incident where the sprinkler alarm in my apartment went off. Like, we were just sitting there one night, the kids were asleep, and the sprinkler starts to go off. And you know, my apartment, long story short, my apartment is like drenched with water, and it actually spilled through to like the floors underneath me, because I'm on the 3rd floor, which is the top floor. Like, the fire department never figured out what was going on. They were trying to like insinuate that someone, like maybe my son, was messing with the sprinkler thing up in the ceiling, but I was like, there's no way that he could have done that. One, he was asleep, and two, even if he was not asleep, like, the sprinkler thing was in the middle of the ceiling, right? And at the time, my kids had bunk beds, so he would have had to have been like leaning over the side of the bunk bed, and like what, like how he could barely even reach the sprinkler in the ceiling. So it was, and there was a whole thing with that. Like, we were out of that apartment for like 2 weeks. We were like in a hotel, and I said, well, maybe somebody at the apartment complex is still upset about that situation, and they did this. Like, someone out here called the police and made up this whole thing. When I say I was paranoid of every single person around me. Just like, who did it? Why did they do it? Still never got any answers for that. It took some time, but I did eventually, you know, start to like move forward from that. But for the longest time, like, I hated the police, absolutely hated the police. And whenever I would see them, I was just like filled with so much rage and anger, because it just felt like I was not protected at all. Like, I was the one that had guns drawn on me and my kids when we did absolutely nothing wrong. Prior to that, I was one of those like quote unquote good Muslims. Like, I was praying, you know, my 5 times a day. I had my little Adhan app on my phone, and every time it would go off, I would go, you know, wash up and get my prayer book out and do my prayer and everything. And I was happy. When I first became a Muslim, I was super happy. It was a very happy time for me. But when that whole incident with the police happened, I couldn't even, like, before I would pray like in front of the window, like whatever direction I had to stay in, I would like put the blinds up, you know, have all the sunlight shining in and everything. That was like my moment. But when that situation happened, like I would pray literally in the hallway because I was so terrified. Like, oh my God, what if somebody's out there with like, I don't know, some kind of like shotgun or something, and they're like off in the woods somewhere, because we live like in front of this wooded area. And I was like, what if somebody's trying to shoot me or shoot the kids? Like, I was keeping the kids away from the windows. It was just crazy. I had so many like Muslim friends that I made. Like, oh my God, that's the thing that I absolutely loved about Islam. I'm just one of those people that I love everyone. I don't care what country you're from. I don't care what language you speak or what kind of clothes you wear. I love meeting new people. It's one of the things about travel that draws me in, is just, you know, going to different places, trying their foods. Oh my God, my Palestinian friend invited us over to her house one day, and oh my God, like not only did she have like her traditional dishes, but she ended up making fried chicken for me. And y'all, you have not had fried chicken until you've had Palestinian fried chicken. Amazing. She was the nicest, kindest person that I had met in a really long time. Like, she could give you a hug, and I mean, it was one of those hugs that made you feel like she could just solve all the world's problems just with one hug. I never felt that before from someone that was like a mother. She was really like a mother figure to me. So I guess the final thing that ended up actually making me take off my hijab and everything and stop, I guess you could say, officially practicing, was after I graduated from Pitt Community College. I got accepted into ECU, and of course I went. And my time at ECU honestly was extremely eye-opening. And you know, ECU, that was my hometown school, but it was like a world away from how I grew up. And everything that I was seeing, you know, classes and things that I was taking, like diversity and gender-based violence and African-American history. I took an LGBT course, Introduction to International Study, learning about social inequality and things like that. And it was extremely eye-opening for me. It really changed how I was looking at the world. Definitely growing up Jehovah's Witness, I grew up in a bubble, a very, very tight bubble. And when I got to ECU, it was like, pop, that bubble was burst. Being around all these different ideas and opinions and everything was really life-changing for me. I was starting to like warm up to the idea of like, you know what? I don't really think that there is one specific way or one specific way that we're supposed to live our lives, and like that's it. Everybody else is just excluded, you know, damned to hell forever. Like yeah, I don't really believe that. The summer that I left, it was Ramadan, and you know, Ramadan, you're supposed to be like praying and fasting. I ended up breaking my fast and having a Coke. Like the first day I did it, and then it was like the second day I did it, and I was like, yeah, Adrienne, you're done. It wasn't something that I wanted to do. Like, I knew right then and there, I can't do this anymore. Long story short, I took off my hijab. I started back wearing, you know, just regular clothes. I will say this much about Islam and Muslims in general. Unlike Jehovah's Witnesses, and I'm not gonna say this isn't like an across the board statement, but for the most part, unlike Jehovah's Witnesses, Muslims don't really condemn you in the sense that like they cross the street whenever you try to, like whenever you see them or whatever. Like, I still kept in contact with some of my Muslim friends. Now, some of them, yes, some of them refused to speak to me again, but it wasn't like some decree that like, oh, you're not supposed to talk to them anymore. When I did my internship for teaching, one of my Muslim friend that cooked for me, she was at the same school, and we hadn't seen each other in so long, and we hugged and everything, and we talked about, you know, how things were going and whatnot. It wasn't that immediate like dismissal, like, oh, I can't talk to you anymore, like, you know, I'm so much better than you, blah blah blah. And I definitely appreciated that. Honestly, I still have a lot of love and respect and admiration for Muslims all over. Like whenever I see one nowadays, I always try to say, you know, Assalamu alaikum. I think I'm more of like a cultural Muslim. If that makes any sense. Like I love the culture of Islam. I love the people, the varied people, because you know Muslims are like all over. I love how people incorporate their culture and customs into the religion. I feel like in terms of like dress and food and things like that. Somebody asked me this recently, like would you ever go back to Islam? I would say right now no. From time to time I do find myself like listening to Quran on an app or whatever, because I like the sound of it. Like Quran is something that is very relaxing and soothing for me. Islam will always have like a special place inside my heart, for sure. That's my story, why I left Islam. Let me know what you think about the video. If you have any questions, leave them down in the box below and I will try my best to answer them. And I hope you guys enjoy the rest of this beautiful day, and I will see you in the next video. Peace out.